Hello! Today we have a very special guest. This is Joyce. As you know, I'm always on social media looking for ideas for video lessons, and I happened to notice a post where Joyce said, I'm going through Greenville, South Carolina. Is there anything optically interesting out there? So of course, I invited her to the studio, where in just a moment, I'm going to put her to work.
Hello, and welcome to Laramy-K Optician Works Training Center, where today John is going to talk about vertex distance.
There, I think you did it.
All right. It only took 5 times.
Outstanding. All right. That's how it works.
Okay.
I just got back from Vision Expo East, where I met those 3 gals, Haley, Sam, and Jennifer. And I asked them to give me an idea for my next video, which they kindly did, and they came up with Vertex. So that is what we're going to talk about. Now, vertex depth, vertex distance, vertex compensation, all work off of those rules about the, and I hate this language now, the perceived change in a lens as it moves closer or further away from your eye. There are 4 rules, but you only need to know one of them in order to fill in the others. What I do, and it's not what actually happens, but for me, I visualize literally. I close my eyes, I think of Sherlock Holmes, I think of a giant, big old round magnifying glass, and he's moving it away from his eye, and the object on the other side becomes bigger. That is my visualization or mnemonic visualization clue. A plus lens, when moved further from the eye, gains in plus power. Right? Whatever works for you, do it. Once you have that, obviously, then you can write it out and fill in the other 3 that you're going to need. Write it down for your exam, put it in your cheat sheet notebook, keep it around work, whatever you need. Vertex distance, vertex depth, vertex compensation only works with contact lenses in a perfect one-to-one relationship. We're going to talk a whole lot about D, the amount that a lens moves in relationship to where it was refracted. And the only time that is a constant is contact lenses, because a contact lens sits directly on your eye, makes D 0. That's when you can use the handy little charts that you'll find out there, like that one and others. It gives you the refracted distance. The other is 0, so you only have to compensate for that 12 millimeters or whatever the given chart is for. Regardless, whether your eye is being overwhelmed, underwhelmed, overpowered, underpowered, perceived, perception, that could mean nothing. Okay? There's not enough power if I don't have 8 diopters or more and 3 millimeters of movement. If this is a little -1 or something, I can move that lens like this. It's not going to make any difference whatsoever. It could be better. Turns out that you're getting a little weaker in one eye, you need a little more power, you move your glasses down your nose a little bit, hey, things are great again, right? Could be better. Or of course, it could be worse. I went back and I was looking at the other stuff I've talked about in Vertex, and I kept repeating over and over, the perceived change in powers, perception, perceived change. And it works, it's right, because in a way your mind and your brain is perceiving it that way. But I think the really good way to think about this is focal length positioning. I really believe that the following series of illustrations captures the concept perfectly for the optician. Look at this one for Carlos. It is only for Carlos. Carlos needs plus 12 diopters of lens power placed 10 millimeters in front of his eye to see well. Now this is everything, so pay attention here. That is for Carlos. Because of the shape of his cornea and or the length of his eye, 12 diopters at 10 millimeters works great. I mean, just look at where the light is gathering on his retina. Now, look at this drawing. Still Carlos. Nothing has changed except he chose a frame where the plus 12 diopter lens is now sitting 2 millimeters closer to his eye than it was during refraction. You cannot change the focal length of the plus 12 lens. I mean, that's what makes it a plus 12. Look at where the light is gathering now. I mean, really look. Think about your refractive errors. What would we need to do to get that plus 12, to get the light back where we need it? We would need to increase the power to bring the light into focus sooner. Or, in other words, that plus 12 to Carlos now seems to be weaker. He doesn't perceive it as weaker, he just can't see well anymore. Now, look at this drawing. Still Carlos. Nothing has changed except he chose a frame where the plus 12 diopter lens is now sitting 2 millimeters further from his eye than it was during refraction. Look at where the light is gathering now. What would we need to do to that plus 12 to get that light back where we need it? We would need to decrease the power to push the light into focus later. Or, in other words, that plus 12 to Carlos now seems to be stronger. He doesn't perceive it as stronger, he just can't see well anymore. All of this because the lens was moved 2 millimeters one way or the other. That is vertex compensation. I have said it 1,000 times, 1,000 different ways. You are not trying to bring Carlos back to plus 12. You're almost doing the exact opposite. You are adjusting him up or down or weaker or stronger to provide him with what he needs 2 millimeters closer or further away from the refracted position. The gals at Vision Expo talked about it, decided on vertex, and we talked a little bit about what that means. And I think the problem that people stumble with a little bit is that there's no such thing as a vertex distance problem. It's not a single question, unless you're talking about context, and you break out the chart and it's all done for you. It is a two-step problem, and it is always based on the D. And when we get down here and we work through a problem, very realistic one that you would see on an exam of some kind, remember it's all about the D, the small d distance, change in position from refracted to as worn. And with 3, you need 8. Okay? With 3 millimeters of movement, small d being 3 millimeters of difference from refracted position to point of wear, you need a minimum of 8 full diopters in order for this to become an issue. And let me show you what I mean by that. If I take my effective power formula and plug in some numbers, watch what happens. And don't worry, I'll break down the formula for you in just a few minutes when we work the problem. If I plug in 5, not exactly a low power, and I work the formula, you end up with a change of just 0.08, which isn't even tolerance for that power using industry standards. Not enough change to matter. Now, look what happens when we jump to 6. You end up with a change of 0.11. Tolerance, 0.13. Not enough change to matter. Look at 7, which creates a change of 0.15, when tolerance is 0.14. I don't think that would keep me up at night. Not enough change to matter. We have to get all the way up to 8. Then we get a change of 0.19 with a tolerance of 0.16. So we need to have at least 8 diopters of power in a lens that is shifted 3 millimeters to have this even begin to matter. Do I really think that a person that needs 8 diopters of lens power is really going to notice? No, I really don't, but hopefully you get the idea. This stuff really only applies to quite high-powered eyeglass lenses and, of course, contacts. So how often do you see plus or minus 8 and over? If you see that every day, well, you really need to pay attention to this stuff, learn it, and you're going to be using it a whole lot. If you rarely see this, if you guys won't even touch that where you work, well, you're not going to be spending a whole lot of time with Vertex. There are 2 other videos that you want to look at when we're talking about this. Also see compensated lens design and the video on tilt, where I touch on Vertex again on both of those. So let's work through a Vertex problem, not a problem, but a 2-step problem. Very realistic, something you'd see on an exam. Wipe the board clean, and I will be back in just a minute. Before we jump directly into the problem, or rather the case study, which you're really going to enjoy, obviously we need to take a look at our formula, the effective power formula, which is where Vertex comes into play. That's it. If you don't get it after we go through this and you're still stuck on some things, obviously head over to the website and work through it a few more times. dE is equal to dL divided by 1 added to small d times dL. What does all that mean? dE, we're going to say it is the diopter value of the error created by the change in the position of the lens. What E is effective, but this keeps it a little bit more like Apprentice's formula problem, so we're going to use that. dL, you're familiar with that. You've worked that in the nominal lens formula 1,000 times. dL is just the lens power as given with the correct sign and power. And that's just it, twice. dL up here, dL up there. All there is to it. D, small d, I said we were going to talk about that quite a bit, and we have. The amount in meters that the lens moved from the refracted position to the as worn. How do we convert millimeters, which is all we're going to get in movement, to meters? You divide it by 1,000. If I had 3 millimeters, I divide it by 1,000. I end up at 0.003, which you've seen in a couple examples already. Where does 1 come from? Guys, I never kid. I never pretend I know something I don't. Honestly, I'm not really mathematically sure. I believe it acts as a constant of sorts, and it was explained to me that this is actually a shortcut version of the larger Vertex or effective power formula, and that allows this to work much easier for our needs. Now, for dL, keep the sign. If you got a -5, it's a -5. A +5, it's a +5. Don't mess around with that. Crazy important here. We're going to only run through the one case study. Assign a negative value to D for a lens that moves away. Super, super important. Doesn't matter if it's plus or minus power. Any amount that the lens is moved further away from the eye, you need to put a minus sign in front of that D, so you end up with something that looks like this, or you're going to get the problem wrong. And I know that's tough, so that's on the website as well. Write it down, learn the rule, figure out a way for you to remember that. Here's our setup. You have been working with Cassie for years now. 4 years ago, she was wearing a -875 OU. 2 years ago, she went to a -9. She does wear contacts, so she's been in the same JB 4147 frame for the last 4 years. She decided it was time for a new look. Same lens design, same PDs, same OCs, same lab, frames that are about the same size and shape, same coatings, etc., etc. The thing is, her old frame was plastic, and it sat 10 millimeters from her eye. Her new frame is metal, with nose pads, and it sits 4 millimeters further away, or has a vertex distance of 14 millimeters. She says that vision just isn't as good out of the new pair as the old pair. What do you do? Don't overthink the question. It's a good one. It's not contact lens spectacle blur. We're not going there. There's no but if here. It's a great question. The bottom line, she's been wearing a -9 for 2 years, and she's been perfectly happy with it. All right, I think we've reached the home stretch. So let's actually work through this problem. I'm going to do everything I can to do this as slow as possible. It's math, so as soon as I start rolling, I get anxious and I go really fast. But I'll try to slow down. There are multiple steps involved. Earlier I said this is kind of a 2-step problem, and there is. We're going to solve for this. Then we're going to decide what we need to do with that. In between those two, there are many, many other steps. So just when you get to this stuff, slow down, take your time, work it through till you have a solution for your customer's problem. We have our formula, and we have our D, and we have our DL. Let's start there. Got DE equal to -9, keep your signs on this one, divided by 1 plus D. Now we can't just grab this and stick it in here. D in this case is in meters. How do we convert millimeters to meters? We divide it by 1,000. So what's 4 divided by 1,000? Let's find out what that is. 4 divided by 1,000 is 0.004. Now, here's a place you can really, really mess up. We said that the new frame that she just put on is sitting 4 millimeters further away from her. That is a minus direction. If you think, in some ways, I think of it kind of as a number line, my head being 0, minus, plus, whatever works for you, but you have to have that right. If you fail to put that minus sign in, you are not going to get this problem right. So this becomes 1 plus minus 0.004 times the lens power minus 9 minus minus. Super important we keep that all straight. So I've got 0.004 minus times 9 minus. That gives me DE is equal to minus 9, 1 plus 0.036. I'm going to save some space here, and so we have DE is equal to minus 9 divided by 1.036. And I'll leave that up there for a second. We've got DE is equal to 9 minus divided by 1.036. If we do that out, we have got minus 8.68. And if we round that, we end up at minus 8.69. We are through step 1 of the 2-step process. Makes sense, right? A minus lens moved further away from the eye becomes less minus, more plus. We were at minus 9. She is now perceiving it, if you will, as a minus 8.69. What's the difference there? Okay, 9 minus 8.69. It's a difference of 0.31. What do we need to do with this? What are we going to do with this to solve so that she can see again? Well, she's wearing 9. She sees it as at this. We need to up this 9 by this amount. I can tell the lab that I need to order a minus 9.31. That'll be perfect. She will see out of that new pair of glasses exactly as she did from that pair before, assuming that our 4 is absolutely spot on perfect. If you're pulling a stock lens, you could go minus 9.25. You could call in and doing 1/8 diopter steps, doing 9.37. Any of those 3 are going to bring her far closer to seeing out of that new pair like she did out of her old one, even though the prescriptions are, the lens powers are the same. So that's where that comes in. Hopefully that helped a little bit. I know it was a good refresher for me. It's been a long time since I worked one of those. And no, man, guys, this is not easy stuff. I know it's very, very confusing, but just keep working with them, work multiple problems. I will see you again next week. If you're watching me on Facebook, please hit the like button. If you're watching me on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button down there in the corner and make absolutely sure that every compensated lens in your life comes from Laramy-K. Today we have a very special guest with us. This is Joyce. All right, let's try it again. See? This is usually how it goes, trust me.